The thin tea glass on our kitchen table was older than our life in England. Its waist was so narrow that my fingers touched when I held it, and a once bright gold band now showed tiny chips where years of dish soap had rubbed it away. 7 years ago, when we packed for Birmingham, I slid the glass into bubble wrap between family photos, a handful of dried lemons, and the note my mother tucked into my coat pocket. Come home when it is safe. We didn't plan to leave Iran. The idea felt almost unthinkable. But Javad had always believed that if something was wrong, you should name it. After a protest in Shiraz, he wrote a short post online asking why young people were being arrested for holding up blank signs. The post spread faster than he expected, shared, copied, screenshot. A week later, 2 plainclothes officers visited his office. They said it was just a friendly chat, but they kept a list of his questions on the table between the teacups. For a while we tried to stay quiet. Javad deleted his account. We stopped having friends over in the evenings. Yet whispers reached us. Another engineer from his firm had vanished after sunrise prayers. A student who'd shared the same post was already in court. Then, late one Thursday, someone rapped on our apartment door. 3 slow knocks, no greeting. When Javad looked through the peephole, no one was there, only a white envelope taped below the frame. Inside lay a single sentence: report to the ministry by Monday. No signature, no stamp. We spent that night at the kitchen table, children asleep, city lights flickering beyond the balcony. If Javad went in, he might not come back. If he refused, the police could come for him. Or for us. My mother lived 2 streets away. Our youngest had just started secondary school. I felt as if the walls of our flat were shrinking with every hour. At dawn, we made the hardest choice of our lives. We sold the car for less than it was worth, borrowed money for tourist visas to England, and told the children we were taking a long study trip. As we packed, I wrapped the thin tea glass in bubble wrap, slipped family photos beside it, and hoped we would return before the scent of home faded from them. In England, everything fell upside down at first. Wrong side of the road. Milk in plastic bottles. Rain that started and stopped without warning. Javad took a job on the night shift at a huge Amazon warehouse outside Birmingham. The building was so big, he said, you could park a jumbo jet inside. Back in Shiraz, he had managed engineers. Here he scanned barcodes and hurried to meet a timer that beeped if he moved too slowly. It bruised his pride, but the pay was steady, and no one asked about his old Facebook posts. I, Samaneh, 49, collector of antique stamps, sent 50 CVs before a secondary school finally called. The head teacher liked that I spoke 3 languages and loved Tudor history. My first day, I stood in front of uniformed teenagers who rolled their R's in a Brummie accent so thick I needed subtitles. They called me Miss S because my surname tangled their tongues. I taught them about Henry VIII while secretly Googling slang like tar and Boston during lunch. Home life clicked into a new rhythm. At 6 a.m, the smell of toast and instant coffee filled the kitchen, while our 3 teenagers, Roya, Daria, and little Arman, argued over the last clean hoodie. They mix Farsi and English into one fast river. Mama, where's my kitab? I mean my maths book. After school, the girls helped Javad practice for his driving test. On Fridays, we carried pots of fesenjan to a neighbour's flat and learned to eat shepherd's pie in return. Sunday evenings were for video calls to my mother back home. The screen often froze, but hearing her say, "Are you eating enough?" warmed the room more than our rattling radiator. We queued at the GP without bribes, borrowed free books from the library, and discovered that even strangers said sorry when we bumped into them. Each small difference reminded us we were guests, yet day by day, Birmingham began to feel less like a stopover and more like a map we could read. For the first time in years, we slept without listening for footsteps on the stairs. We were busy, we were grateful, and above all, we felt safe. Until that wet October night in the yellow kitchen light, when the steam from my tea glass clouded the room, and Javad whispered the words that changed everything. I came home late from marking essays on the Magna Carta. Rain hammered the windows. Javad stood by the cooker, twisting his wedding ring. "I'm HIV positive," he said, voice low. For a long moment, only one thought existed: will Javad live? Pictures rushed in. Him back in Shiraz, flanked by plainclothes officers who watched every move. The danger we ran from then wore leather shoes and carried arrest papers. Now the threat was inside his blood, silent and patient, but just as ruthless. Both enemies worked the same way. They crept up in secret, forced you to hide, tried to erase you without making noise. I saw our 3 children lining up their shoes for school, waiting for a father who might grow weaker week by week. I saw Javad at the warehouse, shoulders bent beneath fluorescent lights, fighting a battle no manager could spot. My heart beat so hard I felt it in my throat. I tried to hug him. He stepped back with shame in his eyes. He swore he'd never been with anyone else. The tea glass in my hand rattled. The steam turned to thin, cold air. And then, as if a second curtain lifted, a new question flashed. What about me? Am I infected too? I tried to stick to normal life, as if a full calendar could push fear away. At school, I set up a pretend revolt. Desks became castle walls, waste paper bins turned into towers, and my Year 8 class charged forward, yelling and laughing. I cheered them on, but under the noise I kept thinking about tiny viruses winning a real battle inside our bodies. At home I started getting ready for Nowruz months too early. I ironed the holiday tablecloth, polished the mirror, and hunted through 4 shops to find fresh wheat for the sprouts. Javad said, "We have plenty of time," but I kept working, afraid to stop. Still, fear leaked into everything. One afternoon, while marking papers, I wrote plague instead of plaque on a student's essay. The extra letter glowed on the page. I stared until the ink blurred and looked like it was spreading. That night I could not sleep. Javad breathed steadily beside me, but my heart raced. I slid my phone under the blanket, dimmed the screen and typed HIV lifespan UK. Page after page opened. On the NHS site I learned the basics. Take your tablets every day. Aim for an undetectable viral load, and you will not pass the virus to anyone. Another article said people on modern treatment can now live almost as long as those without HIV. I read about 3 drug combos packed into one tiny pill. Saw forum posts by men who had been positive for 20 years and still ran half marathons. But I also found old stories, black and white photos from the 1980s, thin faces, hospital beds. The past and present fought on the screen, and I kept scrolling until the birds outside began to sing. Then a single line on the NHS site stopped me. People on modern HIV medicine can live a near normal life and once undetectable cannot pass the virus to partners. I whispered it out loud, tasted each word like medicine. Hope flickered. I printed the sentence at work the next day and slipped it into my lesson planner, right beside the quote I teach every year: "Courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it." The next evening, after the children had gone to bed, I found Javad in the kitchen rinsing lunch boxes. The words inside me felt heavy, but I knew I had to speak. "I was reading the NHS site last night," I began, keeping my voice low. He stiffened, still ashamed to hear the letters HIV. I set my phone on the table and showed him the line I had saved. "With daily medicine, you can become undetectable and live almost as long as anyone else." We sat at the small table, steam from my tea curling between us, as I told him everything I had learned before dawn. How treatment today is one pill instead of many. How side effects are lighter. How couples stay healthy for decades. I confessed I had been up half the night reading survival stories, watching videos, and, yes, crying a little when I saw how much life people still had. At last he exhaled, shoulders slumping as if he had been holding a weight all day. "If you come with me," he said, "I'll go." I reached for his hand. The fear was still there, but now it stood beside something stronger: plans. Tomorrow we would phone the clinic. Tomorrow we would start fighting back. Exactly 6 months after Javad's confession, we climbed on the number 97 bus in steady rain. The windows fogged and someone at the back played music through tiny headphones, just a faint beat under the rattle of the wipers. 20 minutes later, we stepped into the hospital's sexual health clinic, shaking water from our coats. The place smelled of disinfectant and damp wool. Posters on the wall promised fast, free and confidential testing. A receptionist gave us numbered cards, like waiting for a deli counter. Javad's fingers kept folding and unfolding his. Mine felt damp. We sat on plastic chairs that scraped the floor if you moved even a little. A TV on the wall showed silent news. All I heard was the clock ticking, each second loud, as if it were counting my heartbeat. The nurse called our numbers together. Her badge read Amelia. She looked no older than my eldest daughter and wore a rainbow lanyard. "You'll help each other," she said, guiding us into a small room that smelled faintly of hand gel. She checked our names, asked gentle questions, then pricked Javad's finger first. One drop of blood slid along the Hest strip. He stared at it as though staring could turn it clear. My turn. The lancet's snap was soft, but the sting felt big. Amelia laid both strips on a tray and set a timer for 10 minutes. We waited in near silence, broken only by the rain against the window and a nurse in the hallway calling out, "Next, please." I counted my breaths. In 2, 3, out 2, 3. At minute 8, a pale red line appeared on Javad's strip, expected but still painful. At minute 9, the second, darker line appeared on mine. I didn't gasp or cry. The shock was quiet, like someone turning down the volume on the world. My hands went cold. Javad reached over and squeezed them so tightly our rings pressed into skin. We sat that way until Amelia spoke again, her voice calm. "The result is positive." She booked us in to see a specialist doctor and draw another tube of blood. She labelled 2 vials with our names, wrapped them in a padded tray and tapped details into her computer. "You'll get a phone call in about a week with the final result," she added, printing out appointment slips for the infectious diseases clinic. "Meanwhile, try not to imagine the worst. Modern medicine is on your side." Javad folded our 2 slips together and slid them into his wallet. The week before the doctor's appointment felt longer than any term I have ever taught. Every morning I checked my phone for the lab call, then put it face down on my desk so students wouldn't see my hands shake. Javad spoke little. Worry seemed to sew his lips shut. Yet he kept showing he was sorry, bringing me the best pieces of chicken at dinner, washing my coffee mug before I could reach the sink, squeezing my shoulder as he passed behind my chair. At night I opened the NHS pages again, copying down questions in a notebook. How soon can we start treatment? Will the children need testing? What foods make side effects worse? On the third day, the hospital rang. Both confirmatory tests were positive, and a cancellation meant the HIV clinic could see us that afternoon. We sat side by side on the bus, silent but holding hands. The consultant, Dr. Patel, greeted us with a warm handshake, explained our numbers on a simple chart, and said the same line twice so we would hear it. This is a chronic condition we can manage, not a death sentence. She ordered more blood tests, gave us leaflets in plain English, and typed out our first prescription. 1 pill each, once a day, taken with food. We left the clinic carrying a brown pharmacy bag that felt strangely light for something that could save our lives. Taking the tablets turned out to be simpler than we had feared. 1 phone alarm at 7 p.m, 1 swallow with dinner, then on with life. The first week gave us light nausea. By the second week, even those faded. Javad kept his forklift ringtone as a reminder. I kept my school bell tone, and the pills slipped so neatly into our routine that some evenings we looked at each other and said, "Did we really do it already?" Exactly 3 months after we started, Nurse Amelia rang while I was marking Year 10 essays. "Good news," she said, "both viral loads are undetectable." I closed my eyes, let the words settle, and felt the classroom smell change from stale marker ink to fresh air. Javad texted 10 smiling emojis, then sent another that just say, "alive." Tonight the Birmingham rain taps the windows, just as it did the night Javad first spoke his truth. I fill our old Iranian tea glass, the gold rim now chipped to silver, and watch the steam rise. No longer a warning, but a gentle signal that the day is winding down. In the morning I will teach my students about the English Civil War and how ordinary people once dared to limit a king. Our own lesson is quieter, but just as strong. Sometimes the most dangerous enemies are invisible, and the best rebellions happen inside the body, helped by science, courage, and a tiny blue pill. We still miss Shiraz. Javad still works night shifts. Our children still argue over hoodies, and I still iron the Nowruz tablecloth far too early. Life, in other words, goes on. But now every hum of the kettle, every click of our pill bottles, and every undramatic weekday reminds us of one plain truth. Fear can push you out of your country. Hope can keep you in your life.